Welcome to the Stacking Dingers show. This is episode 7, but we are taking a little bit of a step back in time. We're going to be talking Underdog, MLB Basics, a 101 sort of class tonight. I am your host, Matthew, aka Sheep, aka Dark Sheep. I'm joined by Badge Bro Nez. So welcome, Nez. This is going to be aimed at players new or fairly new to maybe brand new to Underdog or just brand new to baseball, but we'll start really basic and our goal is to not make this tied into this year too much, but just maybe a general thing. So welcome.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. We've done quite a few shows together. I've lost track at this point, but yeah, this will be a very nice primer for those who are not familiar with Underdog or maybe just need a refresher. This will serve as that for you, a little 101, as you said. I think we've got some good info to expand upon here, so this should be a good time.
Yeah, so we're gonna start out super basic. We're gonna pretend like you are brand new to Underdog, and this is your first time logging in. And so maybe you're coming from a roto background and you're checking it out for the first time, or maybe I don't know how you've somehow missed the football hype that is on Underdog. But when you do log in right now, the way it's set up, it does bring you to a pick'em screen, which we're just ignoring tonight. But just wanted to start here in case you're coming in for the first time and you're a little bit confused. So you definitely want to go to the draft tabs, where you can lose money slower. So I guess I already had it filtered, but you'll come to the main screen, and it is filled with lots of awesome sports. But we are going to go to the most awesome sport.
That's right.
Some might say the awesomest sport.
I would.
Me too. But that's why we're here. And you'll see it's broken up into two main sections. Up here at the top, you'll see the tournaments. There's 3 right now. That's not really too important, but we're most of the conversation tonight will be teaching and learning about these tournaments and kind of the tournament structure. But if maybe you're not interested in some of these for the first time, there is the ability to draft what probably call sit and goes. Is that, would you?
Yeah. I think colloquially known as sit and go lobbies for sure.
Yeah. So these are essentially not playing for super high prizes at the end. You're playing just within your pod that you're drafting against. There's no advancement structure or anything like that. It does use the same scoring as far as positions and position distributions and scoring for those positions. So that if you wanted just introduction, this is a great place to start. Obviously, the main tournaments are 12-person drafts. So maybe if you want to practice, that's a good place to start. Or maybe you just like having really stacked teams and cheering those on for, more like a smaller boost at the end. You can go to some of these other sizes. I don't do too many of these, so we're not really the focus.
Yeah, not really anything of importance for me. But if that is your cup of tea, there are a variety of options for sure.
Yeah. So let's scroll back up to the important part. That I don't mean that to diminish the people that do want to do those.
Yeah, you're very important to the ecosystem as well. Sit and go, folks.
Yeah. So yeah, we have 3 different entry points here. The things that you want to look at, is prizes to first. You can kind of do your own tournament evaluation, but there are some that are smaller entries and smaller limits. So if we open this is the $3, and you'll see the max amount of entries somebody can enter into the contest. 12 players, 20 rounds. These are all 20 rounds. And it is nice. You can see the rake on these tournaments. Underdog doesn't hide that from us. But yeah, and then just for example, this perfect game is a max 20, and then the dinger is a max 150, which generally when we're having the conversations here on the show, this is the tournament that we're talking about.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. You'll have to excuse my janky camera there, but yeah, we are all about the flagship tournament here of the Dinger. A nice $10 price point, 150 max. Very much in a lot of people's price ranges to get good volume in. This is what it's all about right here, and decently flat as well for as far as a flagship best ball tournament goes. So this is the big one. This is the big one. I'm excited to fire off at this spring and winter.
Yeah, and you can take it is advertised here. All the prizes for all the places, and so on. We'll be getting more into this other stuff as we go. So, anything else before we jump into a little more of the details?
No, let's just dive right in.
All right. So the next tab I have open, which is actually is let's actually go back. This tab is pretty good to know about. Maybe you don't know about it, but if you scroll all the way to the bottom of the tournament, you can go to the all rules section, which will bring up these rules portions of the site that I already have them open, but we'll be going over through the details. And honestly, if you're doing any sport, you probably want to read those at least once.
Yeah, I would, especially with a game like best ball and a game like baseball, where different events can be worth different things depending on where you're playing. If you are not familiar with the scoring, that would be 101. The step one of the 101 is be familiar with the scoring settings, and we'll go over this for you right now.
First we up on the list is actually roster construction. So I'll let you take the lead here.
My fault. Jump the gun.
I'll forgive you this time, but I'm going to cut your camera again if you make another mistake.
Is this my cue to go over the roster?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So as far as starting rosters go, every week you will accumulate points and scores will reset on Monday. So Monday of every week is the beginning of every scoring period. And the starting roster is 3 pitchers, 3 infielders, 3 outfielders, and 1 flex position, which is, of course, infield and outfield. And then you get 10 bench spots as well, which is quite a few, but it makes sense because of the way the baseball season plays out. It's nice to have those extra bench spots. And for us in this game here, we, like I said, are accumulating points throughout the week. And yeah, we have the extra flex position and 20 rounds of drafting, which is a fair amount of picks, but it makes sense given the grueling baseball season that we know and love.
Yeah, I will say, if you are coming to it as a NFL drafter and underdog, it might be a little intimidating at first. The 20 rounds, usually about 45 minutes to an hour. I think you should set aside for a general time. It can be intimidating, maybe a little bit long, but once you reach the midpoint of the season, you're going to be glad that you have extra spots on your bench for all of the injuries and stuff that are piling up.
Definitely going to be thankful for that. And I think you'll be surprised too, if you do these drafts, how many draftable players exist in those 20th rounds. Like, it's not just, you're not taking the same guys every time. There's a lot of different options that you can take in the 20th round, which makes it pretty fun in my opinion. And also, as far as starting lineups go, if you're not familiar with best ball, you don't choose any starters. It's your highest scoring players are your starters. So you build a roster, and however those players do in every single week, then that is how points are accumulated. We will go into the playoffs, which are slightly different, but same principles.
Yeah, and if you're used to outfielders being outfielders, there is this little note here that something that Underdog does do is that DH players are added to the outfield pool, which we'll talk a little bit more once we're going to talk a little bit about basic strategies, but we'll get to the player distributions later. All right, so moving on from here, we have the scoring and how the players score. So, starting with pitcher, we have five. Only it's pretty simple. There's only 5 things that you need to worry about, and that is wins, quality starts. Which, Naz, what is a quality start?
6 innings pitched, aka 18 outs, and giving up 3 or less runs. And yeah, I think that those are the requirements. You can't give up more than 3 runs. If you're going into the 7th, 6 1/3, you give up a 4th run. I meant to say, then you're in trouble.
Or if you get 5 2/3 of innings, you're not going to get it.
Nope. Yeah, got to be 6.
Whereas the win, you do qualify as a starter after 5. So that is a little bit different. It's funny because I saw the same look on your face. Like I always have to think about what is a quality start again.
Yeah, you put me on
like,
the spot. Little pop quiz. I'm like, wait, what the hell is this goofy ass stat? It is nice though. It's necessary for best ball for sure. But
yeah,
it's pretty goofy.
It's not something people talk about too much, other than the guys that really get them well. You don't hear about guys who don't get quality starts too often. Just the guys that do it really well.
Yes. Yeah. Good point.
But then we have strikeouts and innings pitched. And then the only negative scoring opportunity of hitters or pitchers is when you give up an earned run. So the thing that, you look at this immediately and you say, oh, well, wins and quality starts are more important because they're worth more. But, maybe that's your initial thought. Maybe not. But we do have a nice graphic here, which I'm going to bring up now. So this is made by our a new friend, Billy Jones. He's at SportsVizBJ. I asked him to put this together, and this is something that helps me, or sort of shows better how scoring actually works within a game. So this is a graphic. Right now, this is the top 50 pitchers. Our goal really isn't here to identify which pitchers we think are the best or anything, but more to look at how the scoring is distributed by a player. So as you'll notice, there's 2 big bars that stand out, and that's the innings and the Ks. So this is actually on a per game basis. So taking the projected amount that a player is going to score through the whole season divided by the amounts of starts that they are projected to have. So yeah, those 2 big bars there really speak to the volume importance of a pitcher.
Yeah, the name of the game is definitely volume. If you're highly efficient along with the volume, that is just obviously a very big bonus. But you can clearly see the bulk of our scoring is done by innings and Ks. And the more innings you pitch, the more likely you are to get a K as well. So innings kind of beget Ks. Unless you're Strider, then you're just getting a strikeout every at bat anyways. But yeah, this is a very helpful visualization to kind of see how points are scored and where certain pitchers butter their bread, such as Strider, obviously big K guy, go down a few spots. Blake Snell, big K guy as well. So this is a very, very good chart to kind of see how these pitchers are earning their fantasy points.
And the guys here at the top in the top 150 have probably similar or close to similar skill levels, and as you get further down, maybe this red bar of earned runs per game grows. as you get further down in ADP. But I think the important thing to look at here is how much earned runs actually kind of don't matter. The fact that all of these guys have pretty much the same amount over the course of a season is really telling to me. Like, I don't know about you, but I never think about earned runs.
No, not when I'm drafting in season long. I don't really think about the earned runs. I am, like I mentioned, thinking about volume and who has the ability to maintain a starting role all season long, and who can pitch into games and get those bonuses of wins and maybe even a quality start if we're fortunate enough. But yeah, earned runs do not play a very big part into my process when drafting pitching.
Yeah, and similarly, the quality starts and wins, which are notoriously said to be, kind of random at times.
Mhm.
You'll talk about maybe a guy on a better team has more chance at a win, but really it's not that much of a bonus. And like, again, this might be just this class of pitcher, but they're the amount of times that they have a quality start or win per start doesn't really add any more than the next guy to their overall usefulness.
Yeah, these things are pretty random. I would not try to predict these or go based off of what happened the year prior. Blake Snell famously, or maybe it was Joe Musgrove, but famously, had very few wins on his record, but had a great ERA and a lot of innings pitched. You can't look at the year prior, obviously, and determine, oh, this is what's going to happen this year. Wins and quality starts are not indicative of skill. They are partly random, but yeah, these are just something that, obviously the better pitchers will have the opportunity to accumulate more of these things, but not something that we are predicting.
Yeah, and again, this is on a per start basis. Obviously, um, if you really want to start thinking, the next step to take from this basic thinking about scoring for pitchers is to think about the guys that can get you like high scoring weeks, outside of this generalized per start graph. But that's a little more advanced than we're going to cover here. But that's sort of that next level for you to start thinking about after you think about the volume thing.
Yeah, well said.
All right, so scoring for hitters. So there's a lot more categories here. So sort of work your way up: singles, doubles, triples, home runs, each worth more than the last. A walk is the same as a single, and hit by pitch is also the same as a single. RBIs and runs are both worth 2, and stolen base is worth 4. So the thing that has always stood out to me about this scoring distribution compared to some other sites is how it kind of de-emphasizes stolen bases
Hmm.
compared to if you're used to playing on DraftKings or FanDuel DFS type scoring.
Yeah, it is slightly diminished, but it definitely does bolster certain guys.
Yeah.
If you're a big stolen base guy, that is these are a big part of what you do. And so if you maybe there's a player that did well in years past, you're looking at their box scores of the years, and they butter their bread with stolen bases, and maybe they're getting up in age, then maybe that's something that you should probably dock for and projections. But the more overarching point, like you said, is that this is definitely not something that is as big of an emphasis on other fantasy websites, but still helps.
Oh yeah, yeah. I didn't mean to say it's 0. Just the fact that it is 4 and a double is 6 is a little bit different.
Yeah, it definitely helps guide us on where to place our emphasis on archetypes of players for sure.
Yep. Yeah, and the other thing, maybe more for the people watching this coming from a roto background in baseball, there's really quite a difference in pitchers and hitters, like really taking a mindset shift from uh, the different categories and how you need certain players, that maybe the ERA for a pitcher you're worried about, whereas here you're not too worried about it, or stolen base guys, you're not worried about it as much as getting those guys specifically.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? A lot of people probably coming from Roto or categories leagues. This is just straight points, so it really simplifies things, and but it greatly changes the emphasis and ADP in which we are taking certain players in different types of leagues.
Yeah. So we do have a nice graph, thanks to Billy again, on outfields. I do have outfield and infield. We're looking at outfielders here. So this is the top 50 outfielders. Not 50, 30, whatever. I don't number. This is the top end of the outfield group. We'll say that.
It is definitely the top end. For Underdog, this is essentially like the first 2 rounds because of how early they go. But yeah, this is the top end, cream of the crop.
Yeah. So I'll let you, this is a little bit different than the pitcher, where we kind of saw a lot more uniformity between how pitchers score. So I'll let you highlight a couple of players here, not so much, what they're going to do this year, but sort of like the archetypes and how different players score.
Yeah, so as you can see, are the universal 101, or at least the 101 for Underdog. Ronald Acuna does quite a bit of everything, but you can see he has that stolen base bar that just puts him over the top. And nobody else really comes close to his points per game just because of his ability to hit a home run, as well as score a run, as well as steal a base. He's on a loaded offense and he's a great hitter. So, you get that extra emphasis from his stolen base. Whereas you go to somebody like Yordan Alvarez, where he is giving you all of the stats with the stick, right? He is giving you singles, doubles, triples, and, well, not necessarily triples, but home runs, as well as base on balls. And that's where he is really earning his his fantasy points. He has virtually zero, like he's going to project for 0 stolen bases, but he is still projecting for over 10 fantasy points a game, which is absurd. So 2 different styles of hitters there that earn their livings in very different ways. And you can even look at somebody else, maybe like Teoscar Hernandez, that doesn't walk a bunch, or where you're going to see a very small bar there, but he plays in a great offense, so he gets an extra boost from runs and RBIs that maybe another hitter in a more quiet offense won't.
Yeah. Let's see. Is there anybody on here that's on a terrible?
Well, Corbin Carroll is interesting because he's a leadoff hitter, so his RBI bar is very short.
Yeah. As who's I thinking about? Bobby Witt. He's on the next chart.
Mm-hmm. He's got a very unique scoring bar.
So let's just, as a couple more players here, we do have the infield one. So yeah, I'll sort of talk about a player on kind of a worse team, but he's sort of like a similar category of Acuna, just less at each one. He is giving you points throughout his profile, and Pete Alonso is the infield version of what you're talking about with Yordan.
Exactly. And then you have somebody like Bo Bichette that is hardly ever going to walk, but he'll hit a bunch of singles and plays in a good offense. So, or should be a good offense. We'll see. But yeah, very interesting to see like how these players all stack up. For me, as far as offense goes, I'm definitely looking more towards the guys that can slug well as opposed to the guys that can steal a lot of bases. And if you can do both, then you are a top 50 pick.
Yeah, and that's where again the next level of, okay, this is what they're scoring, per game on average, and that's where you go to that next level and say, well, yes, but on the days that Pete Alonso hits 2 home runs, he's going to be adding that week. He's going to be adding scoring that week a lot more than maybe Bobby Witt is the example here. I mean, he can add up a lot of ways, but so yeah, it's interesting that next level of hitters. Then once you kind of understand how they score, is how that scoring happens on a week to week basis, which is
good point.
Which is our next category, or our next section here we're going to talk about. So here I have the Dinger rules. I should say, did you have anything else on scoring?
No. Other than I guess we'll get into the schedule and whatnot later on. So no, nothing really to add there.
Okay, so we have the Dinger tournament rules here open, and like I said, it's a good idea to read through this, whatever tournament you're entering. Maybe there's something you didn't realize. Maybe we'll hopefully cover most of the stuff here as we go through it. But the first thing that you come across here is the advancement structure. So basically, when you come into the tournament, you enter your 12-person room, you draft against those 12 people, and then for round 1, you're competing against those 12 people. And then, depending on the tournament, this is different. What we call the advanced rate structure, or the advancement structure, is at the end of round 1. In this case, the top 2 people go on to the next group. And then round 2 is 10 people. In this case, top 2 move on. Round 3 is 10 people. One person moves on from that onto the final round, round 4, which is a 280-person group. And then, the prizes get awarded all the way up to first place over that period.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting where you know who you're playing against in round 1 for the length of the best ball regular season, and then those 10-person groups after that are all random. So there is a level of luck to be quite honest, and variance in these games, but that is honestly a large part of the fun, and that kind of gives everybody a shot that advances, as opposed to knowing whether or not you are live or dead based on the first 6 weeks of the season or something, if you're playing a cumulative type of format. So I enjoy the randomness of the pods. It can be kind of confusing for people. No, you don't redraft the team. It's your same team. It's just randomized with a random group of 10, and hopefully you finish top 2 of 10 in those in that first round.
Yeah, and it's not you're not like the highest scoring people aren't avoiding each other in the next round. So it is completely random. And the other thing, as you move on, you drafted in round 1 with this 12 people, so obviously nobody can have the same players. And then moving on, you will encounter the same players in your pod.
Yep. Yeah, it's inevitable. It's just like it adds a wrinkle of strategy to it that how do you want to draft? Do you like how what kind of uniqueness layer can I add to my lineup to have a player or two that other people won't have in the next round? It adds to the fun of draft season.
Yes, for sure, and it gives you an excuse to draft weird players. I'm doing it to be unique.
Love that.
So then the other thing important to know with those rounds is the length of the rounds. So round 1 is the first 16 best ball weeks, which is a real week period of time, right?
Yeah. Other than like week 1, I think is like a little bit expanded, and then I think the All-Star break is a little bit expanded, but otherwise, yes, it runs Monday through Sunday. So yeah,
Yep.
it's the whole week.
And then once you get to what we call, usually referred to as the playoffs, which is round 2, 3, and 4. Those are each their own 2 1-week periods. So whereas round one, you're hoping for guys to total points throughout, a big scoring period. Once you get to the playoffs, it becomes almost like a brand new game.
Yeah, exactly. Which is very interesting the way that this is like set up. People do get kind of confused seeing that it's 2 weeks, wondering if it's all just like your best score out of 2 weeks. It's separated into two 1 week scoring periods, like you said. So it's very unique and almost like a completely different game, to be quite honest. We play this lengthy regular season, and then we get into this sprint of the playoffs. It's very different.
Yeah, so here they do have all, each week start and end where it is, and as you can see, best ball week number, 1 and 1. Oh, one. Sorry, you're right. One is extended. 2, 3, 4. So these are the weeks as they're shown above, and then you'll see here, the rounds, and then you just graphically, visually, like looking at this, you can see how much is round one,
Yeah.
and then how short these playoffs that actually are at relative.
Hmm. Yeah, it
Um,
turns into a sprint very, very quickly, and you realize how cruel the best ball playoffs can be. They're fun, but they're merciless.
yeah, and just for a reference point on this season, uh, uh, July 16th is the All-Star break. So if you're thinking about the baseball season and how that overlays on top of this scoring periods, the All-Star break is here right at the end of round one,
Yeah, good point.
which comes when this was important for me to think about. Because a lot of times people are like, pitchers especially, or some like coming back from surgeries, they'll say, maybe a month into the season, 2 months, these estimated time periods, or a very common one is after the All-Star break. So that's why I kind of highlighted that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like you said, a very key component for injury timelines for a lot of players. So it's a large portion of the regular season. It's a very large portion. However, I mean, all the money is won in September. So, it's not the end all be all, but just understand what kind of ground you need to make up.
Yeah.
It's important to highlight.
Yeah. And, that is the another important thing you need to look at here is how the prizes break down, um, and understanding, like you said, um, let's see, I don't have, I didn't do the math, but you have however many pods of 12 people with 2 people moving on from there. That puts you into this $10 category. So you're just getting your money back. So advancing doesn't really get you much. And then, each time you move on in those playoff really sort of bumps it up. And then in this case, the finals was the 280 person final, which is if you can get there, you'll be guaranteed a $500.
Not bad. Not bad for making the finals.
Yeah. And this is a bit different than last year. And so if you're coming at this in next year, this is something you want to look at and think about. And if I haven't looked at the other tournaments, but like, for example, I guess I have looked at the perfect game. That is 4 people advancing out of the first round. So your strategy might be slightly different depending on the advancement structure and the payout structure of the tournament that you're entering.
Yeah, very well said. Not to get too in the nitty gritty, but yeah, 4 out of 12, perfect game. So in theory, you can kind of take more risks, but there's also a larger buy-in. Of course, it's 10 times as much to play the perfect game as it is the dinger. So you don't want to get too risky because there's $100 on the line. But it's interesting with the 4 out of 12. You can, in theory, take a couple more risks than maybe you normally would.
Yeah. I think something that is not really known, and I didn't know this till recently. Last year is there's an interesting thing with ties.
Yeah.
So if you're tied after an advancement period, the tiebreaker is the player that has the highest scoring player in that round. And then it just works its way down. Like if you both have Ronald Acuna as your highest scoring player, it'll go to your second highest scoring player and down. So we did interestingly see, some people losing on tiebreakers because they're bench player. It'll go down to your bench player.
Yeah, it will. And imagine having the exact same team as somebody and it coming down to who entered the contest first. I mean, God, that's such a nightmare scenario. I think for everybody. I don't even think Underdog likes that, but I think that's a very fair, like, last resort. Like, okay, whoever entered first, you advance. Congrats. Early bird gets the worm. God forbid that would ever happen. But yeah, it's I don't think anybody's strategizing for that, but it is good to know.
Yeah. And then there is some details here on obviously they don't allow cheating. No big surprise there, or using multiple accounts to enter the thing. Um, but the thing to note here, obviously, because nobody listening to this would be planning on cheating, is that sometimes you will get entries canceled, which can be frustrating, especially if you're someone that likes to have an even number of the amount of drafts that you do. And these checks happen periodically. Underdog is not really tell you when, or the exact details, just to be a little bit behind the wall on how they do it, so people can't quite game the system.
Yeah.
But just as a warning, if you do see your favorite team disappear, there's a chance that somebody in that was caught for colluding in other drafts, or maybe there was some really oddball teams drafted that don't pass the sniff test or the underdog test.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's important that it takes place because we are playing a peer-to-peer game, and I'm thankful that this takes place. It can be disappointing when it happens, like you said, but yeah, just in case that happens to you, don't panic. It's just part of the system and the checks doing what they're meant to do.
Yeah. And when it comes down to it, all the randomness, that team was very unlikely to win you anyway.
Honestly, yeah. Like, to be quite honest, probably wasn't the one anyways. The probability wise, I could probably guarantee it wasn't going to win.
Yeah. And there are, I guess we could have covered this. There is slow drafts
Yeah.
available if you don't want to do the fast drafts. They are 8 hours for the pick clock, which can be another frustration, especially if you're not quite used to that long of a clock. If you're just doing one draft, that can, you can be waiting a while. And then there is as we get closer to the season, those timers will go down automatically.
Yes, they will. They will go down to 4 hours and then inevitably down to 1 hour. So, if you're cramming in slow drafts at the end of draft season, just know the avalanche is coming. So just be mindful of when you're registering for these things.
Yeah. And then there is a pause overnight, which
Yes.
does get longer as you get closer. So those, as the timer gets shorter, they are kind of nice about the overnight pause. So yeah, that is tournament basics, and roster basics and all that. So the next couple of things we're going to talk about are more the we'll call them frequently asked questions, but as we're in Discord channels, or you're doing streams, I feel like there's a couple of frequently asked questions that people always have, whether depending on where they're coming from, they might be different. But the first one people always ask is, how do I build my roster? Not necessarily who do they play, who should they pick, but how should I build my roster? So what is your usual first what is the first thing you usually tell someone who is brand new and asking that question?
So we mentioned that there are 20 rounds to this draft. So the rule of thumb that I would probably follow, unless you're doing like a goofy roster allocation or something abnormal roster allocation wise, like i.e. starting off with like 5 straight of a position. 6s and 7s are is like the rule of thumb. And what I mean by 6s and 7s is having 6 of one position and 7 and 7 of another position is definitely the most common way to draft in this tournament. And the sixth position, the lighter of the two positions, or is of the three positions, is likely to be something that you put a little bit more draft capital in. So let's say you started a draft off with 2 pitchers. Well, you're likely not going to need that 7th pitcher. Maybe you only want to stop at 5 if we're getting crazy. But 6s and 7s is a good rule of thumb. And I will caveat that in these drafts as well, they are very outfield heavy. So you're going to see outfield go earlier than maybe you would in your traditional fantasy draft. And that's just because you need 3 outfielders and 3 infielders, and there are way more infielders in the player pool than outfielders. So there's a scarcity aspect to it. So I just don't want you to get caught if you're in here drafting for the first time. I don't want you to get caught with with a lack of outfielders. They go early and they go often.
Yeah, and then they're more of a cliff. There's not really like a gradual decline. There's sort of an outfield cliff when it comes to like projected points and just playing time in general. Because like you said, it's a simple math game, and this is why they add the DHs to the outfield pool. Is there's just more infielders in baseball among all the teams than there are outfielders, just because how many players play on the I was gonna say the court, but I'm a baseball guy. I don't even play any court sports. But anyway, the field, play on the field.
Yeah. If you're wondering why DHs are outfield, that is why. And trust me, you get into a draft, you'll be thanking Underdog the next minute that they made DHs outfielders, because it would be tragic if they were not.
Yeah, and it can be a source of frustration if you're someone who isn't prepared for it, or maybe you don't really like it. But ultimately, it is the game that we have. This is the set of rules that we're playing under, and we're playing with the same set of rules as everybody else. So it's something, I don't know, you can accept it or not, but that's probably the best for your mental health.
Yeah, just understand that it is what it is, and it's for the better. Trust, just trust.
Yeah. So then the next question that I think people come to once they just kind of have that idea of how to distribute the players on their team through those 20 drafts, I think generally maybe not a roto categories player is going to come in with this question, but somebody coming from either DFS baseball or DFS football or underdog football. The question is about stacking.
Yeah. So the question, to stack or not to stack. And obviously stacking comes with its variable outcomes, where you stack a team and that team busts, for whatever, name your reason. Then of course, like, your team is dead. But there's also that chance where you stack a team and that team overperforms. And the way baseball works, especially this contest, if a team is doing well and a player is hitting another player in for a run, that's a run and an RBI, that you're now doubling up on those points. That accumulation matters so much, and it matters less so, honestly, in the long term, and more so in the short term, where you have this 1 week sprint, and if you can catch an offense and they are doing well in that 1 week, you are going to see just overwhelmingly positive results. But obviously you don't want to build the entire plan out of the black box, right? We don't want to overstack one team because bad things can happen, as well. You want to have outs where you maybe have, 3 or 4, set your own limits based on your own risk tolerance, but stacking is an important component of best ball, MLB best ball as well. And it's integral. However, I wouldn't draft suboptimally just to obtain a stack at the same time. It's nice to have. You should be trying to acquire them. Don't draft suboptimally just to have a stack. That's
Yeah.
my spiel.
I think the discussion is, where does the suboptimal get too much? Like how much you're reaching for stacks, but there is obvious correlation benefits that you get from stacking hitters from the same team. The Then the question is there any benefit to pitcher stacking? And for the most part, no. I don't think there's really there is, once you get really in the next level of pitcher thinking, you're maybe like thinking about getting 3-start weeks in the playoffs and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, I don't think there's really any reason to stack pitchers or any reason to avoid stacking pitchers from the same team.
Yeah, I don't think we have a lot of data that shows us it's overwhelmingly, advantageous to stack pitching, or like a really big boon on your outlook either. But if it happens, it happens. But I'm definitely not targeting like an entire staff on purpose for any particular reason.
And maybe the reason you're taking pitchers from the same team is because they play in a beneficial park for pitching, and that's not because they're on the same team. That just happens to be because they pitch in the same location often.
Exactly. Yeah, at that point, it's just a correlation to park factor.
Right. And when it comes to hitter stacking or juggling pitcher quality, 3-star weeks and all this sort of stuff, generally what we know now, what we know in a month when spring training starts, what we know a month into the season, what we know 3 months or 2 months into the first period is all going to be changing. So if you've got like projected lineup open and you're like, I'm going to get the 3, 4, 5 hitter on this team, you're most likely going to be wrong at some point during the season. So it really doesn't matter to me who I'm taking from the same team. Just making those bets on an offense in general is important.
Exactly. It's too hard to predict for every single lineup, like what it's gonna look like now compared to what it'll look like in September when we're playing for the fantasy championship. It's just too hard to predict. So yeah, same team though is going to be helpful.
Yeah. So the last little thing then, I think that maybe a slightly more advanced concept, but something that people are thinking about when they're first starting to draft is, when should I draft? So right now we're before spring training. Should I start drafting now? Should I draft till after spring training's here? Should I draft as close to the season as possible? You have any general tips that you like to give for how people should draft, or when they should draft, I mean?
It's really just whenever you feel comfortable. If you would prefer more information on players breaking camp, lineups, things like that. That's just how you prefer to the information that you prefer to have before drafting. That's totally fine. I don't think there's any sort of optimal time to begin drafting. Obviously, if you are very confident in your ability to project players and think you have an edge in getting in on a certain player or a certain team, before the market realizes that, then by all means draft early. But for me, I am somebody that likes to scatter throughout the draft season. I like to have teams drafted in various portions of the draft season to get different textures naturally, just based on the way ADP has moved and based on new information. So I like to do all at once, essentially.
Yeah, and I'm in a similar boat. I like to draft, obviously the excitement of getting started, I'll draft more.
Yeah.
Then, sort of try to meter it out throughout the drafting period. And then, maybe as the contest is starting to close, I get excited again and I'll do a few more, but I'm not thinking too much about it.
Yeah.
The other thing that is important for me is when I'm going to enjoy drafting. So
Yeah.
life circumstances are a lot more important to me than, uh, you know, when exactly on the information cycle I'm going to be drafting.
Yeah, like we kind of mentioned here, the entertainment factor of this is very important, and I think Underdog does a really good job. And the drafting fantasy teams is fun, so Underdog does a good job of making this enjoyable. So if you feel like you're grinding and you're losing the enjoyment, the contest, depending on its fill rate, will always be there. But yeah, for me, I want to make sure that I'm having a good time. So if I feel like I need a break in drafts during draft season, I'll take a couple of days off. It's no big deal. I'll be okay.
Yeah, exactly. Um, all right, so that is what we've got for our basics of underdog drafting for baseball. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Maybe you have another basic question. Leave it in the comments. It's usually or it is me fielding those answers. So uh, I will be trying to answer if you have other general questions and maybe something a little more advanced that will go on to a show list for the future. So thank you for watching. So for Nez and myself, goodbye.